When I first started getting into Magic the Gathering, Ixalan had just released. I remember that standard format like it was yesterday. Ixalan released so many powerful new cards that went on to dominate several standard formats. Black-white tokens, green-red dinosaurs, and of course Vona Control, all just completely dominated, which led to the banning of Call to the Feast, Regisaur Alpha, and Axis of Immortality to rein in each respective deck. While this was going on, in the background was a middling limited mechanic from Kaladesh and Aether Revolt called Energy. The idea of Energy is to use cards to generate energy and then put that energy into payoffs. Now, while the archetype failed to really do anything in Standard, in Modern Horizons 3, Wizards of the Coast promised that they would make Energy playable in Modern. And so far, despite new card printings, the archetype has struggled to find its place in the Modern meta. So, what happened? Why does an archetype with Modern support still fail to put up numbers? Why does no one play Energy?
Do everything properly and lightning bolt only in Dingo's upkeep. And here we go.
Packs it in, can't beat the Harsh Mentor. Nicely done from Ben Smith.
So basically, Ajani makes a cat token for the 0, and then if you control another red permanent, it deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to any target.
This video was chosen by our viewers in a community poll for the 1,000 subscriber special, so if you want to stay up to date with things going on in the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. Once again, thank you all so much for 1,000 subscribers. We would not be able to be here without you. To start, let's take a look at a modern-day Energy deck list. The current brewers have mainly centered around a Boros-style deck, although a Mardu version is out there. However, Thoughtseize is a bad card, so we're gonna focus on the Boros variant today. We'll begin with the reason players even bother with this, the energy cards. Guide of Souls, Amped Raptor, Galvanic Discharge, and Static Prison are the best draft chaff that players were able to find. Guide of Souls is just kind of a Soul Warden with slight upside, gaining energy when a creature comes in, and can buff up a creature and give it flying for 3 energy, but usually dies to Doomblade before it matters. Amped Raptor gives 2 energy and then exiles cards from your deck until you hit a non-land card, which you can then play if you have enough energy equal to its mana value. Galvanic Discharge is a slightly stronger Harness Lightning, able to hit Planeswalkers and 1 mana cheaper. Finally, Static Prison does its best 1 mana O-Ring impression, but needs an energy each turn to keep it from sacrificing itself. Due to these cards just barely passing the bar of a thing you can do in Modern, I guess, the deck doesn't have enough energy cards to make a full energy deck, and has to rely on non-synergistic cards to try and plug some holes. Ocelot Pride is a 1 mana creature that generates tokens when you gain life and has Ascend, allowing it to double tokens made each turn. While the City's Blessing is powerful, it clearly wasn't enough to swing the 2024 US presidential election. On life gain synergies, Boros Uro is a fine card for this. While it is just a 3 mana Lightning Helix, it can come back in the late game for repeatable life gain triggers for Ocelot Pride. While this is cute, it's too overcosted and doesn't really see much play outside of energy. Ajani Nakatl Pariah is a side-graded Raise the Alarm and can occasionally transform into its Planeswalker side that synergizes with Ocelot Pride. Goblin Bombardment can turn your terrible cards into damage or removal spells, and Blood Moon single-handedly saves the deck by making it unable to play bad white cards. Lightning Bolt is there to remove better creatures like Psychic Frog or Go to the Face in a frustrated concession. Finally, the deck runs copies of the One Ring. I really think this part of the video where I go over the list just kind of speaks for itself, but I suppose we can go over some of the other issues that this deck faces. As mentioned already, energy decks really struggle with a consistent strategy and instead need to split themselves into different strategies in order to make up weaknesses and actually try and win a game. But what do you do when you have Guide of Souls but no Boros Uro? Boros Uro but no Graveyard? Plus, if Blood Moon is out, Boros Uro is a complete non-bow alongside every other white card in the deck. Comparing this to the top decks in Modern, Dimir Frog runs plenty of creatures that care about their graveyard, which synergizes with its plethora of cards that go to the graveyard after they're cast. Mono Blue Belcher runs a powerful synergy of Goblin Charbelcher and no lands. And Mardu Energy runs an incredibly effective energy strategy alongside powerful staples in its colors. Boros Energy is simply unable to keep up with this level of consistency and streamlined strategy. And it doesn't help that Boros Energy limits itself to only playing 2 colors. While 2 colors made sense in Modern's past, the recent printing of the fetch lands opened up the way for decks to easily run a 3rd color with little cost. And what did all the previous mentioned decks have in common? That's right, blue. If Boros Energy could just introduce some blue cards, the best color in Magic, the deck would solve its problems. Want to play the energy plan? Izzet Generatorium generates more energy for the deck and offers a card draw payoff, and Thriving Turtle is a 1-mana growth threat that survives Lightning Bolt off a single attack trigger. Want to pivot into the tokens plan? Junk Winder can cheapen itself and tap down creatures every time Ocelot Pride makes cats. Want to go hard on life gain? Drogskull Reaver turns that life gain into card draw, allowing you to finish out a game by burying your opponent in card advantage. And while these are all great ways to make the deck less divided and have a more streamlined plan, a diluted strategy is the least of the deck's worries. Like the worm that consumed RFK Jr.'s brain, the One Ring is the worm that consumes the Modern player's brain. It seems that everyone playing Modern these days has been whipped up into a frenzy over this shitty artifact. The One Ring is a 4-mana artifact that draws you a card and gives you protection the turn it comes down. We've had a 4-mana card that's done this for years. Cryptic Command, which can also bounce something to hand, counter a spell, gives you protection by tapping the board down, and draws you a card. The One Ring is the newest victim of new toy syndrome, where players see the most recently printed card for Modern and immediately gravitate towards it and forget about any other cards that have been printed. But hold on, I hear you say. The One Ring may only draw 1 card when it comes in, but after that, it can be activated each turn to draw you more cards and can even find more copies of itself. And you are correct. However, each time you activate the One Ring, you put yet another burden counter on yourself, and you lose life each turn equal to the amount of burden counters on the One Ring. As we all know, keeping your life total as high as possible is one of the most important things you can do in Magic. That's why I can kind of see the One Ring working in this Boros Energy deck, because it runs so much life gain alongside the energy cards that it can keep itself at a healthy life total. However, the One Ring has other issues in energy. It's a total non-bow with an early Amped Raptor, which will exile it if you don't have Fort Energy available. Finally, the One Ring's protection and card draw effects are really great when you're playing from behind. They're an easy way to dig out of a bad situation. However, playing from behind is a failing mentality. You are planning to lose, and this is a terrible mindset to have at a competitive level. At a competitive level, all the cards in your deck should be good while you're already winning, because you need to plan on winning so you can keep winning harder. And so many decks in Modern right now have cards that can just counter the One Ring anyways. Meta powerhouses like Merfolk and Spirits both have clean answers to the ring that are on curve. There's also colorless answers like Phyrexian Revoker, which can completely shut off the draw effect. And again, if it's not an energy card, why bother playing it in the energy deck? Well, it's because the payoffs of energy are so much worse than the payoffs in Boros. Why does the energy deck stoop so low as to include tokens and life gain strategies to try and get ahead? It's because the payoffs of energy are just that far behind everything else. Guide of Souls can turn 3 energy into 2 +1/+1 counters and a flying counter. Psychic Frog can do that to itself for the low cost of discarding 3 cards with 1 more +1/+1 counter to go with it. Galvanic Discharge can remove a creature or planeswalker by paying energy. Unholy Heat can do the exact same thing with Delirium. Static Prison is a 1-mana Oblivion Ring. Portable Hole does a great impression, is a more relevant type, and doesn't sacrifice itself if you run out of energy. Amped Raptor is a far less consistent cascade effect that can completely whiff without the right amount of energy. At that point, just play Living End, where you always know what you're gonna hit, and the effect is completely uncounterable. Time and time again, we see this with struggling archetypes. Their build-around mechanic just isn't worth building around. And even if it was, there's so many different ways to stop it. Solemnity and Sun Cleanser are both clean answers that cut off energy. Solemnity prevents it from being gained, and Sun Cleanser completely removes all energy from you. Just like back in Kaladesh and Aether Revolt in Standard, the mechanic just can't find good enough payoffs to keep it relevant. It couldn't compete in Standard, and now in Modern, it looks like history is repeating itself once again. I think back to my time playing in the Ixalan era Standard when talking about modern energy decks. How similar things were then compared to now. How, despite Wizards of the Coast's best attempts, we have yet to see energy become a breakout deck. The lack of consistency forcing the deck to go multiple directions was the first nail in the coffin for the archetype. Having to run non-synergistic cards and stooping so low as having to run the One Ring to make up for a lack of good payoffs was the second nail in the coffin for energy. Maybe sometime down the line, Wizards of the Coast will finally print a card that can propel energy into meta relevance. In Standard, something like a turn 1 play that gives 2 energy and find a basic to help fix your mana could have helped the archetype. As for Modern, I'm not exactly sure what they could print to make it work. There are great energy cards that have been recently printed. Cards like Seiya, Dr. Madison Lee, and Liberty Prime all came to mind. Energy, like so many other mechanics, may unfortunately be relegated to Commander, the format where anything, even this failed archetype, can thrive.